Welcome back to PC Builder, I'm Jason. Now 2024 is an amazing time to build a gaming PC, but we've also seen some massive PC builds fails, from bad GPU choices to terrible CPU choices to bad CPU and GPU combos to budget PC builds burning all their money on the wrong parts. We've seen it all. Let's go through the worst but surprisingly common PC build fails of 2024 with my updated advice so you can avoid mistakes and build the best gaming PC for you. If you get value out of the video, give it a like. It makes a huge difference to the channel, especially this guy right here. And of course, subscribe, click that bell icon. That way you get notified when we release cool PC content. With that, let's jump into it. This video is sponsored by VIP SCD Key. Say goodbye to crazy expensive Windows licenses and that terrible Activate Windows watermark. Right now, use the links in the video description, head over to VIP SCD Key and get a Windows 10 or 11 OEM license for a great price. Pick your product license, then use the PC Builder discount code PC25 for an additional 25% off. Go to the activation settings on your PC, put in the code, and boom! Windows is fully licensed for a crazy low price. And Windows 10 can be upgraded for free to Windows 11. And they have Microsoft Office licenses too. Use the links in the video description. We've got Sappy. Sappy says, hello, Mr. PC Builder. Hello, Sappy. Probably the best PC tutor that you've seen. Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Big fan of the content and the cat. Well, cat loves that. And they're trying to pick PC parts for a while, mostly for gaming, but they also do recording and video editing, about a 50-50 split. And they have a budget of $700 US. Now that's getting kind of tight. $700 US. Couple of components are going up in price like RAM, SSD, and others. Looking at playing optimized games like Fortnite, Apex, CSGO, high FPS. Hope we can help me with all your knowing knowledge. My knowing knowledge. All right, let's see what you got. Oh, no. We've done absolutely the upside down thing on this build. What am I talking about? We have massively undersized our GPU and we've massively oversized a lot of other components. Drives me crazy at this budget level. But let's focus in on you finish out at $739 of your $700 budget. Now, I will say I don't mind going over a little bit to more $750 to $800. In our recent best February builds, we did a $750-ish, but a little bit more if you wanted a really good GPU in there build. And I think that puts us in a different performance category than even spending like $720. So that extra little amount of money really does make the difference here. Let's start with the GPU because I don't love how we've sized our GPU. You went with the RTX 2070 Super, a used one that you say you're going to get for $200. I checked on eBay just moments ago. Yeah, 2070 Super is easily available for that price. But 8 gigs of VRAM. 8 gigs of VRAM, and it's used, and you can buy a new equivalent, which is the RX 6650 XT, for like $20 or $30 more. $20 or $30 more. It's going to give you actually slightly more performance. It's going to come with this thing called a warranty. If it's bugged or if there's something wrong with it, you send it back, you exchange it for a new one. I just don't love buying a used card that has a new equivalent that's almost the same price, especially when it only has 8 gigs of VRAM. A CPU, 5600X. I don't know why everybody loves buying the CPU. When I look at like what CPUs people buy from our Amazon links, for instance, I constantly see the 5600X outselling the 5600, and I want to pull my hair out. I want to pull it out because it's the same CPU. You're just spending an extra $20 or even $30 at times. Now, look, there have been some sales where the 5600X has gone below that price, and that's fine. Grab it, or if it's only a couple bucks, but $20 at this budget makes a difference, especially when we're talking every single component. Grab that 5600 instead. For the cooler, I would have gone included stock cooler here, especially given our GPU level of performance, until I can get to at least that 10, 12 gigs of VRAM on my GPU. You can't add money into your GPU later, but you can add an aftermarket cooler later after you use the included stock cooler. So that would be probably my recommendation here. I know you want to go white RGB on everything. I can see that from the build already, but we have to recognize what level of performance we're at, and we're in a more budget tier, so every last buck is going to count. The motherboard, MSI B550M Pro VDH, the problem with this board is just too expensive. I don't care that it has Wi-Fi on it. $120 too much. There are Wi-Fi B550 motherboards for like $89. Again, this is a budget class of motherboard, and I personally hate the way this motherboard looks. I've never liked it. There's also a newer version of it, by the way, the Pro VC, which I think has Wi-Fi 7, don't quote me on that, but it has an upgraded Wi-Fi module on it. Again, not in love with this motherboard choice. For the RAM, $55 is too much. Now the RAM speed, 3600 CL18, perfectly fine. Same speed basically as 3200 CL16. If you're confused by that, watch our best RAM for gaming video. I'll leave it linked down in the video description as part of our how to build a PC playlist. But $55, you can buy those 3200 CL16 kits that are not white RGB. They're just kind of plain vanilla looking for like $35. Again, $20 more we're spending on white RGB. It's just because DDR4 is becoming kind of that budget class of memory where memory makers aren't gonna, once those white RGB units have run out, which they've run out, they're just not gonna do that anymore because people aren't overspending on the RAM right now. You went with the Motion Vortex 1 terabyte. This is fine, 60, yours is $70. Normally sells for 60, looks like, just out of stock over at Amazon. That's fine. We just wanted to get the cheapest 1 terabyte NVMe drive that we can right now. NVMe prices have massively increased. They have more than doubled at this point, more than doubled for a lot of units out there. So just grab whatever you can right now, but we don't need something super fast for a budget gaming PC. In the case, I don't mind the Montech Air 100 ARGB. Might be a little pricey, $70 right now. I also see the plus on it, which means it's not sold or shipped by Amazon out there. It's completely third party. Again, great case, but there are some cheaper alternatives that are like more like $50. Power supply, 600 watt of PVA Prestige. It's a fine unit. It's on the speculative list on the C tier. That just means they don't have all the teardowns and stuff that they can to fully certified as C tier rated on the PSU cultist list. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, check out our best PSU buying guide from last year. We go through everything, how to size, how to buy it for quality. There are some other units out there right now that are C tier rated finally on the market. They're about this price. I'd probably switch over to them. All told, $739. I'm just not seeing the level of performance here. I'm not happy with 8 gigs of VRAM on our GPU. I just feel like we could do way better for this price point. I call this the $730 1440p gaming PC build because you're going to be able to play all titles and you're going to have enough VRAM to do that in 2024. Let's start off with the budget. I finished out at $734.81. $734.81. You were $5 more than me. Now, again, I'm going to advocate that you spend at least this level because I think you get a significantly higher quality of gaming PC. Otherwise, we have to drop down to 1080p. And how are we doing that? Well, we're going to get a GPU that's capable of playing all those titles, and we're going to invest in that GPU specifically. Let's jump into that GPU. I went with a Gigabyte Gaming OC Radeon RX 7600 XT, 16 gigabyte GPU. Right now, they're all 329 basically. You can take your pick of the litter. This is the only card that I have a lot of experience with right now. It does have, it's 3-fan. The cooler's massive overkill for this thing. You can overclock it a little bit if you want. In addition to that, or you can just do the auto overclocking feature. Heck, you can just do whatever you want and just run it out of the box. It's going to give you far more than 60 FPS at 1440p across all titles. Now, what are your alternatives here? It's 3060 12 gigabyte, not bad if you want to save, $40 or $50 and you got to hit under that $700 price point. That would have been my go-to is the 3060. That's more like 60 FPS at 1440p. If you can find a 6700 XT 12 gigabyte, I would strongly urge you to buy that for around $330 over this. But there's only one model at the time I'm filming this, and I have no confidence it's even going to be in stock by the time this video goes live. I think those are just all going away. Let's talk about the performance level you can expect from this GPU. This is the RX 7600 XT 16 gigabyte tech spot review. I'll leave it linked down in the video description. They go through all the individual games. You should focus in on that if there are some specific games that you play. Right now, look at 67 average FPS across a wide suite of titles at 1440p with higher ultra settings. You should get significantly more performance, especially in those competitive shooter type games where you're going to turn it down to competitive settings. Let's look at the alternative right now, which is the 3060 12 gigabyte. Actually, that 3060 12 gigabyte would perform about where that 2070 Super would, and that's what I would urge you to get if you had to hit under that $700 price point, because you can pick that up for about $290 right now, save yourself about 30 or 40 bucks off that 7600 XT. But the 6700 XT 12 gigabyte, if you can pick that up, it is a substantial boost. It's a substantial boost, but unfortunately, it's just going away. I think the 7600 XT is going to have to become my new go-to around $300 for 1440p gaming. Now listen, for the rest of the build, in order to make room for this bigger GPU, we made a couple of compromises here, but I did set you up on a future upgrade path. So this PC is not going to be dead in a couple of years. You will be able to upgrade it. I went with the AMD Ryzen 5500. The 5500 for $99 right now. I was trying to squeeze a 5600 in or an i5 12400, just reasonably could not do it given your budget and given the FPS targets that we wanted to hit at 1440p. But this is going to be a wildly performative CPU for what you're paying for it. And in the future, you are going to be able to drop in a Ryzen 5700X3D, 5800X3D, and kind of turn this whole PC up to another level of performance. And it comes with an included Ray Stealth stock cooler, absolutely adequate for what we're doing. For the motherboard, I went with a Gigabyte B550M DS3H AC. Now, you wanted Wi-Fi on your motherboard, it looked like. The B450 AC boards, none of them really have BIOS flashback, which I think you might need still for the 5500 on some of those older boards. So I just went with this instead for like $10 more. It's only a $10 difference right now. I figured let's get you a B550. That way you get PCIe Gen 4 when you drop in that new CPU upgrade, the 5700X3D, 5800X3D in the future. You will not have it right now because the 5500 is only PCIe Gen 3, but we'll set ourselves up for the future. The other reason I like the B550 boards over the B450, the B450 boards typically only have one M.2 slot, where the B550s come with two. Almost all of them come with at least two slots on it, which is 2 thumbs up, so you'll be able to add in storage in the future as well. RAM, we just went ultra budget cheap here, silicon powered DDR4, 3200 Seal 16, same performance as the kit you were looking at, but $35, much better price. For the drive, I just went and saved another $10 off or $8 off here, going with the silicon power 1 terabyte NVMe. Again, the A60 here is all you need. It's absolutely all you need for gaming, and we're just looking for the cheapest thing. Now, this drive used to be like $35. Now it's $61. So you can see the direction storage is going in. That's why I keep urging people, if you want to build a gaming PC in 2024, honestly, the beginning of the year is probably the time to do it before these prices go up. For the case, again, we're just trying to save all the money we could. Could actually gone with a cheaper case, but then you get Molex fans, and I just think the BitPhoenix Nova Mesh is really tough to beat in terms of its price to performance. It's only $58, so it's actually about $12 cheaper than the case you were looking at. It still comes with 3 included ARGB fans. We built our 7800 XT and Ryzen 7600 build in it. Absolutely amazing for that build. So I really do like this case for about $58. Honestly, for the PSU, I could have spent another $15 or $20. Unfortunately, those MSI units have come up in price about 15 or 20 bucks since last week. I don't know what's going on there. They have been fluctuating. It's possible that it's selling out again, and we'll be stuck with the Apivia Prestige 600 watt. If you want to go ahead and buy one of them, like the A550BN or A650BN, those are the MSI units, for about $60, $65, you can go ahead and do that. Otherwise, I think you're fine to stay with this unit for $52. All told, for $734 right now, you are getting a hugely performative 1440p gaming PC that has a future upgrade path at the CPU. You're going to drop in that 5700X3D in a couple years, and you're going to be good to go. And you're going to be able to play all titles right now at 1440p. Pretty darn good frame rates right now with 16 gigs of VRAM on this thing for $735. So I hope you feel like your build is boosted. Future Jason here. What would I do differently right now? Well, I'd build a way more powerful gaming PC for just $10 more. I call this a $740 1440p beast update. And we finished out $740.53. Now listen, that current build right now would still net you out just under $700. What we're seeing there is a massive reduction in CPU, GPU, PC component prices across the board. And I also want to say that I'm filming this a couple weeks before Amazon Prime Day. And what happens before Prime Day and all these other big sales? Well, retailers rip out all their discounts on it so that when you get to those big sales, it looks like a bigger discount than it really is, although you do get discounts during those sales as well. So I think this is actually a worst case scenario right now. During Prime Day, you'll probably find this almost around $700, if not less. Let's go through. Let's start off where else the GPU. I went with the XFX Speedster 6750 XT. 6750 XT, 12 gigabyte GPU. Now, Jason, you went from 16 gigabytes to 12 gigabytes. Listen, for $300, the difference between those is irrelevant, absolutely irrelevant. This is a way faster GPU. And one thing we found since that is that the 7600 XT really wants a PCIe Gen 4 system. Now, we could, of course, go with the i3-1200F or a Ryzen 5600 instead of the Ryzen 5500 like we just did. But spoiler alert, this GPU is also going to give us more FPS. And then for the CPU, we're going with the i5-12400F for $109. What is going on? Intel finally deciding to get off their rear end and start cutting prices out there, this is a great pickup for just $109. You get a CPU that's very competitive with the Ryzen 5600. In fact, it basically trades blows with the Ryzen 5600, and your future CPU upgrade is going to be a 13600KF or K when they come down in price. For the motherboard, ASRock B660M Pro RS. I love this motherboard. If you're going to go with LGA 1700, that's Intel 12, 13, 14 Gen, and you're not going to go super overclocked, anything like that, this is a phenomenal motherboard. It'll work just fine with the 12400. It'll work fine with the 13600K, that any of those. Now, it's only going to run at stock settings because it's a B series motherboard, not a Z series motherboard, but you'll be able to clock up the RAM on this. And obviously, we're going with a locked part right now, so it's no big deal. And in the future, when we drop in that 13600K, it's going to run just fine at stock settings for only $89. For the RAM, one of the things we've learned very, very recently, Hardware Unboxed did a great series of testing on how much RAM you need in 2024. And they found that for a handful of brand new AAA titles, primarily single player stuff, that 16 gigs of RAM will cause games to slightly microstutter occasionally. And if you don't want that interrupted game experience, it wasn't game breaking. For only 20 bucks more, we can go from 16 gigs of RAM on the build we were just looking at to 32 gigabytes. Why not just do it? Go 3200 CL16 all the way for just $51. And then finally for the power supply, because we are going with a 12400F, not quite as power efficient as the Ryzen 5600, which right now is $129. That's why I'm not going with the 5600, though you could, if you find it on a deal, of course, go that way instead. We're going to go with the Gigabyte UD750GM. This is a B tier rated PSU. It's a last generation PSU. It's not PCIe Gen 5 and ATX 3.0. But you don't need that for this build. Absolutely don't need it for this build. $78 for 750 watts is a really good deal. Oh, we're sticking out with the same case, basically same drive. And for $740, you're going to get an insanely more performative 1440p gaming PC build that's going to take you now and into the future. So I'll help you feel like this build has been reboosted. We've got Hollow. Hollow says, "Hi Jason, love your videos, and I've been watching for a while as I've been learning more about PC building. They're currently building their nephew's first gaming PC. They're trying to build a budget AM5 computer for 1080p gaming. What are we doing here? With a fairly open upgrade path for the future. Yikes, there is no budget 1080p AM5 PC. That's just all those terms don't go together. It's really, really confusing. I can only imagine what this build's going to look like. He loves games like Fortnite, Minecraft, run great on older hardware, by the way. He also loves RGB. My computer wants his to be pretty as well. Hey, we can definitely take care of that. From Canada, all right. And trying to keep the budget around $1,500 Canadian, which is about $1,100 USD. All right, I'm a little worried about this one, but let's see what you got. Oh, no, this is not what we do. This is all the wrong things coming together. What am I talking about? I'm talking about you spent $1,370. Now that's Canadian. That's just a little over $1,000 USD. And we got a PC that, while technically it would all work together just fine, an absolute disaster in terms of its level of performance for the amount of money that we're spending here. Let's start off, where else the GPU? Now, if I gave you $1,000 to build a gaming PC and you came back with the RTX 4060 8GB GPU, I would probably pull all of my hair out. This is a terrible GPU for any level of gaming, really. It's overpriced, it underdelivers. If you want NVIDIA, the RTX 3060 12GB is a far better option out there. It's only got slightly less performance and it's got 12 gigs of VRAM. Now listen, I know that your nephew said that they mostly play Minecraft and Fortnite. Those are not hugely VRAM sensitive games, but as they get older, maybe they want to play something like Alan Wake 2 on release and at 1440p, and they're like, oh, this card's just not going to cut the mustard, doesn't load the textures, my game's stuttering and crashing. What the heck's going on here is because you don't have enough VRAM. 8 gigs of VRAM is not enough, especially $1,000. If you were spending $500 US, I'd say, hey, 8 gigs is probably the best that you're going to be able to do, but you're going to be able to play 1080p games and turn some things down. You're spending double that and you're getting the same amount of VRAM, just not going to work in 2024. I think this is a really big mistake. I know you wanted to go with the Ryzen 5 7600 or 7600X. You wanted to go AM5 for future upgradability, but I think what we ended up doing is kind of boomeranging ourselves because we're spending so much on the CPU platform, and the Ryzen AM5 platform is not cheap. If you want cheap, go with something else like a 12th gen Intel or Ryzen 5000, and that will give you far better price to performance, and you don't need a CPU like this for the level of GPU that you have. We could go with a much stronger GPU instead. Ryzen 7600, amazing gaming CPU for mid-range gaming PC builds with much faster graphics cards, but right now we're just spending a lot of money and not really getting the performance we need. The cooler is absolutely adequate. Any budget tower air cooler is fine with the Ryzen 7600 or 7600X, and the Thermalright Peerless Assassin X Refined. Can we streamline the naming a little bit? Because you got like 17 of these coolers that basically do all the same thing with 17 different names out there, but they're all basically around $20 US. This is $33 Canadian. Motherboard, I do like the ASRock B650M PG Riptide. In terms of the US market, it hasn't really fared that well. It's really kind of a little bit too expensive up there, and I've been recommending some of the other boards instead. But if this is a good board in the Canadian market, go for it. We've used this in builds. 2 thumbs up. $199 Canadian. I hate the RAM, absolutely hate it. I have no problem with Kingston Fury Beast. They make good modules, but we do not want DDR5 6000 CL40 RAM. This is slow. The CL40 is slow. And Ryzen 7600 is memory sensitive, and really there's no price savings. I know this is hard to believe, but there's no price savings by going with slower DDR5 because they're not selling that into the DIY PC market. They're selling it to laptop and OEM and everything. So these kits cost almost as much as the fast one, so just go ahead and buy the fast one. Drive, I like the Western Digital Blue SN580. This is their updated version of the SN550 and then the SN570. So this is gonna be your basic HMB processed, no DRAM on it, but you don't really need it. It's going to be that kind of budget SSD NVMe that you're looking for in a lot of kind of more budget-oriented builds. The case, I'm not that familiar with the Game Dias Talos E2 Elite. I'm not going to comment that much on it. If you like this particular case, it looks okay. It looks like there's basically a side slit here, but the front is glass. I don't know what the airflow on that looks like. We are not using really that high heat part, so I think we probably get away with it, and especially if you decided, because I know aesthetics were important, that this is the case you want, well, $70, we'll go ahead and go with it. For the PSU, I'm not familiar with the Corsair RM650. This RM650 that I know is an older power supply from like 2020 or 2021. I see this as the 2023 update. I'll have to check it on the PSU Cultist list. It looks a little expensive for 650 watts, and I don't know if it's A tier or B tier rating. I think the old RM650 was either B or C tier. I've been recommending the RM650E. That's a newer version of this power supply that's A tier rated. So let's see if we need this. 650 watts, you know, it's probably appropriate for this build level and this budget level in terms of the GPUs that we're going to want to put in here. So maybe we'll use this. All told, for $1,370 Canadian, about, you know, a little over $1,000 US, we're just not getting the level of performance here. I could destroy this, absolutely destroy this build with like $800 US, $800 US. I could destroy this level of performance. So we need to pump up the volume here. Your nephew deserves an amazing gaming PC. I called this the $1,500 Canadian or $1,100 USD 1440p gaming PC because we're going to be playing games at 1440p. Forget 1080p for this budget. In fact, I don't want people thinking about 1080p again unless you're only spending about $500. For this budget, we are going to absolutely destroy games at 1440p. And in fact, I finished out at $1,487 Canadian. So that's less than $1,100 USD. I'm super excited about this because it's going to give you the upgradability that you were looking for on AM5, and it's going to give you insane amounts of performance for your nephew's game, and they're going to feel like they can play any title. Let's jump into what else, the GPU. Honestly, it's tough in this price point, but I decided to go with the RX 7700 XT 12 gigabyte GPU. This GPU has gotten serious price cuts over about the last couple of months, and it's finally coming to line where I thought it needed to be in order to be a competitive offering. In fact, in our last GPU market update, I identified this as one of the best values right now at 1440p at that lower price. Finally, AMD realized that they got to sell this at a decent price. I will say, if you're looking for an NVIDIA alternative, the RTX 4060 Ti, 16 gigabyte, but you're going to spend about another $50 USD for that, and that would put us over our budget, and as we're about to see, the performance just isn't there. This is the Tom's Hardware review of the RX 7600 XT, so it's got a lot of the GPUs that we're looking for, and this is relatively fresh data. I will say I went through this suite of games. This really leans pretty heavily towards NVIDIA. It kind of feels a little biased towards NVIDIA, but you can look through this yourself and tell me if you think I'm wrong on that. I'll leave a link to it down in the video description. Even so, look at this. The RTX 4060, about 61 average FPS, 49 on the 1% lows. The 7700 XT, 90 average FPS. That's 50% more FPS, 50% more FPS for the same price basically, and 71 on the 1% lows. So it's 1% lows or even like 20% higher. I can't even do the math there. You do the math for me. Than the RTX 4060. Absolutely insane. As an alternative, if you are looking at the 4060 Ti 16GB, it's quite a bit behind the 7700 XT. And at this level, I think the 12 versus 16, I'm not as cautious about the 12 gigabytes given what we're spending for this GPU as it would be if you were going like the RTX 4070 Super versus the 7800 XT. But if you decide you want more VRAM with less performance, you could go with the 4060 Ti. Just also know it's also a more expensive card, which is also kind of hard to swallow. That's why I do like the 7700 XT here at 1440p. Let's punch through the rest of the build. Honestly, we stuck with the Ryzen 7600X. Doesn't make any sense right here to drop to a lower level of CPU performance because those CPUs like the Ryzen 5000 and the locked 12th, 13th, 14th gen Intel CPUs, they all run into a bottleneck at basically any GPU higher than the one we have right now. So pulling from our CPU to put into our GPU doesn't make any sense. We're going to end up GPU bound. So I do like the 7600X. I did note the 7600 is a little cheaper. Seems like it's sold out everywhere though right now. Doesn't matter which of these CPUs you get, but these are great and they're going to give you that AM5 upgradability in the future. For the cooler, any of these budget tower air coolers, and Thermalright makes good ones. There's id cooling out there. Deep Cool makes a lot of them. Any of these is absolutely fine for that Ryzen 7600 or 7600X CPU, and $33 Canadian is a pretty good price. For the motherboard, I swapped out the ASRock PG Riptide board you have. I know that has a little bit more RGB to it. If you want to go ahead and pump a little extra money in there, I just wanted to make sure I definitely hit your budget. So I went with the ASRock B650M Pro RS Wi-Fi, which is selling for an insane price, $161. Now that's after the $40 mail-in rebate, but take advantage of that because that's $118 US. I have never seen this board that cheap in the US. I'm kind of jealous. And we use this on our Ryzen 7600, 7800 XT gaming PC build. It's a great board. It's got 3 M.2 slots. It's got Wi-Fi on it, kind of everything you need for a really, really cheap price. For the RAM, I went ahead and got you the same RAM kit that I keep recommending. Just happens that in Canada, it's also one of the cheaper ones. That's the Team Group T-Force Delta DDR5 6000 CO30. If you want to go ahead and find the Kingston Fury Beast modules, just make sure you're getting DDR5 6000 CO30 RAM. I'm going to give you 2 thumbs up. And this is actually $2 cheaper than the kit that you were going to get that was super slow. For the drive, we went with a Western Digital SN5 81 terabyte. I don't know why the picture says 250 gigabyte. The page says 1 terabyte. That's the one we want. $91 Canadian. So really, really good price. There are some slightly cheaper drives out there if you want to shave off at like another $10 Canadian and go with like the Silicon Power A60 or something like that. But this is a great drive. And if you feel good with it, 2 thumbs up. For the power supply, I was just able to find a way better deal out there. I went with a Gigabyte UD750 GM. Yes, I know Gigabyte had some exploding power supplies, but those were not the UD ones. The UD ones are actually quite good. These are B tier rated, 750 watts. It's fully modular. It's not PCIe Gen 5 or the ATX 3.0, but you really don't need that, quite honestly, for this level of build. $99. It's about $30 cheaper than the PSU you were going to get, and we get another 100 watts. All told, $1,487 Canadian, or about just under $1,100 US. We are getting a significantly more performative gaming PC capable of playing all the latest titles at 1440p, importantly, and you're going to get tons more frames. You get 50% more FPS than you were looking at, despite the fact that I felt like that suite of titles really leaned heavily into NVIDIA. And we're going to preserve all that awesome RGB out there, including that in your GAMDIAS case, I got you an extra fan to go in the back as well. So I hope you feel like your build is boosted. Future Jason here. What would I do differently right now? Well, I get way more performance, way more gaming performance at 1440p, possibly even 4K for $1,500 Canadian or $1,100 USD. And we're going to get 16 gigs of VRAM, insane. Let's punch through this. I finished out at $1,504.55. $1,504.55. What did I do differently? Let's start off with the GPU. I went with a Gigabyte RX 7800 XT. This is the gaming OC version. This is the one that tech testers tested all the 7800 XTs, or most of them, and found that this one had the most overclocking headroom on it and could boost up to the highest boost. $649 Canadian. It's about $475 US. It's about what you find this in the US. And again, phenomenal pickup, way more performance than the 7700XT, and more importantly, probably, especially when you're spending almost $500 USD for a GPU, we're gonna go to 16 gigabytes of VRAM. Good news for the CPU is we can dump the Ryzen 7600X and go with the Ryzen 7600 for quite a bit less money, $259 Canadian. Remember, that's Canadian dollars, not US. In the US, you can typically find these for about $189 without any kind of major discounts on super sales. You can find them a little bit cheaper right now. And same performance as 7600X, just gonna be a much better price. For the CPU cooler, good news is Cooler Master Hyper 212 Spectrum V3. This is a super basic budget tower air cooler, 4 heat pipes on it. Looks pretty nice, has good RGB, $16.99. Remember, that's Canadian dollars. This is like 12 bucks. This is like 12 bucks USD. It's insane value. And I would grab this in a heartbeat because it allows us to get under that $1,100 USD price point. For the case, we went out and swapped it out with another case, that GameX case or that Game Max or whatever that thing is, that's not available any longer, even in Canada. I just swapped it out to a case that I like. That's a Sama ARGB Q5. Comes in white, comes in black. A little bit more expensive on the black one. I just went with the white one right here. $59 Canadian, $59 Canadian over at NOOOOO Canada. The power supply, listen, that gigabyte unit for whatever reason has completely inflated in value. It looks like they're just kind of out of stock in Canada. So we'll replace it with a 750 watt MSI Mag A750BN. Now this is C tier rated. You certainly could spend a little bit of extra money if you want to get something more like B or even A tier rated out there. That being said, $94, remember, Canadian, and $94 Canadian, super great price for this PSU, and it helps keep us under our budget. We basically stuck it out with the same motherboard, the same RAM, and the same SSD, and all told, $1,504.55. You're getting in tons more performance, and we're jumping up to 16 gigs of VRAM, which is gonna be great for now and far into the future. So I hope you feel like this build is reboosted. Remember, if you got value out of this video, please give it a like. It makes a huge difference to the channel, especially this guy right here. And of course, subscribe, click that bell icon. That way you get notified when we release cool PC content. Hey, speaking of cool PC content, do you want even more Boost My Build? Check out the entire playlist right here. We do all kinds of amazing PC builds. So check it out, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bite, 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 bite.